Warning disclaimer: the following story is a dramatic retelling based on documented eyewitness accounts, historical records, and folklore tied to the Tower of London, one of England's most haunted landmarks. Some of the details have been adapted for narrative effect, but all incidents are inspired by real claims of paranormal activity and the castle's grim history. This story may contain unsettling themes, including ghostly apparitions, death, and psychological distress. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you are sensitive to topics of haunting, execution, or loss, proceed with caution. This is not just a ghost story, it is a walk through centuries of sorrow and the echoes of the dead. The Tower of London looms over the River Thames like a stone sentinel of sorrow, steeped in centuries of bloodshed, betrayal, and bone-chilling secrets. Tourists may see it today as a proud monument of British history, but the walls whisper a far darker truth. Beneath its historical prestige lies an atmosphere soaked in grief and unrest. The tower has been a fortress, a royal residence, and most infamously, a prison and execution site. Every corner, every chamber, every shadow seems to hold onto pain, as though the stones themselves remember. Built in the 11th century by William the Conqueror, the tower's primary purpose was to dominate and intimidate. But over time it became the final stop for those who fell from grace: royals, traitors, heretics, and even innocent souls. It was here that the axe fell on Anne Boleyn's neck, where Elizabeth I was imprisoned before becoming queen, and where the mystery of the two young princes would forever stain the tower's name. The chilling aura that surrounds the tower isn't born from legend alone, it's the countless true stories of suffering that took place within its cold walls. Visitors and guards alike have reported ghostly encounters over the centuries. Some say they hear whispers in languages long dead. Others claim to see figures in royal dress vanish before their eyes. But one thing is certain, even skeptics feel a strange weight when they pass through the archways. Something lingers in the air, just beyond reason. Walking through Traitor's Gate, where prisoners entered by boat, knowing they would likely never leave, is enough to unsettle anyone. There's an eerie silence here, broken only by the occasional splash of river water or the murmur of tourists. But to those attuned to the paranormal, it's more than just atmospheric. The air turns thick. Shadows stretch longer than they should. And sometimes you'll feel watched even when you're alone. One of the most ominous parts of the tower is the Salt Tower, used for solitary confinement. The stone walls are etched with desperate carvings from prisoners clinging to hope or sanity. Historians have uncovered accounts of madness taking over the minds of those locked inside. Some of those poor souls reportedly never left, even in death. Their presence is said to manifest as sudden cold spots, low growls, or the sensation of a hand brushing past when no one is near. Then there's the Queen's House, home to the final days of many condemned royals. It's in this very building where whispers have been caught on recording equipment and where psychic investigators claim portals remain open between the physical world and something beyond it. The tower isn't just a symbol of royal heritage, it's a graveyard of ambition and desperation. Every execution, every wrongful accusation, every betrayal has left a scar. Perhaps it is this tapestry of injustice that fuels the spectral energy trapped within its ancient walls. After all, history can't be erased, only repeated or worse, replayed. Even modern-day yeoman warders, famously skeptical and grounded in British tradition, have their own stories. Some refuse to patrol certain areas at night. Some admit, quietly and with great caution, that they've seen things they can't explain. These aren't ghost hunters or thrill seekers. These are trained soldiers who live on the tower grounds. And even they acknowledge something is wrong here. As the sun sets over the Thames and the tower becomes bathed in long shadows, the air changes. The laughter of tourists fades, replaced by the silence of the dead. For those brave enough to linger, that's when the tower shows its true face. A place where history lives not in books or displays, but in echoes, in cries, in cold spots, and in sightings that make your blood run cold. Because the Tower of London doesn't just remember its past, it relives it. Among all the ghosts said to haunt the Tower of London, none is more iconic, more tragic, or more frequently witnessed than Anne Boleyn, the ill-fated second wife of King Henry VIII. Her story is not only one of royal betrayal and political ambition, but also of a restless spirit who never truly left the site of her execution. More than 4 centuries after her death, Anne's ghost is still seen wandering the tower grounds, as though her soul remains trapped in the place where her dreams were shattered and her life was taken. Anne Boleyn was once the Queen of England, adored by some, despised by others, and envied by many. Her charm and intelligence won the heart of King Henry VIII, who famously broke away from the Catholic Church just to marry her. But the same passion that brought her to the throne would also lead to her downfall. When she failed to produce a male heir and was accused, falsely, many believe, of adultery, incest, and witchcraft, Henry ordered her execution. On the morning of May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn was led to the scaffold on Tower Green. Unlike most executions, which took place at Tower Hill, Anne was beheaded in private within the Tower walls, perhaps to spare the royal family further scandal. It is said that she met her death with grace and dignity, wearing a simple gown and praying quietly. A French swordsman carried out the execution in one swift stroke, and Anne's head was placed into a straw-filled basket. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula nearby. But her spirit did not rest. Almost immediately after her execution, strange happenings began. Over the centuries, countless guards, visitors, and even clergymen have reported seeing a woman in Tudor dress walking through the Tower grounds, sometimes holding her head in her arms. Some say she appears in the Queen's house, where she spent her final hours. Others claim to have seen her near Tower Green, standing silently, eyes closed as though reliving the last moments of her life. But perhaps the most chilling sightings take place within the very chapel where she was laid to rest. During a renovation in the 19th century, a soldier reported seeing a procession of ghostly figures dressed in ancient garments moving silently through the chapel. Leading them was a woman whose face, pale and regal, turned toward him before vanishing. The soldier fainted on the spot and had to be carried away. His report was dismissed at first, but then another guard saw the same vision a week later. Anne's apparition is not always peaceful. Some guards claim they've heard a woman's screams echoing down dark corridors at night. Others have felt sudden, bone-numbing cold in areas known to be connected to her imprisonment. On one occasion, a sentry near the White Tower saw a pale woman in a long dress approaching him in the dark. He called out for her to stop. When she did not respond, he lunged with his bayonet and the blade passed right through her. The soldier was found later, trembling and unable to speak for hours. But it isn't just nighttime guards who've had encounters. Tourists and staff in broad daylight have reported feeling watched or touched when standing near Anne's memorial stone. Some describe the overwhelming scent of roses, Anne's favorite flower, just before catching a glimpse of her figure in the distance. There have even been photos taken inside the chapel that show a faint, glowing outline of a woman's silhouette standing where Anne's grave lies. What's perhaps most unsettling is that Anne Boleyn appears not just once, but in many locations within the tower. It's as if her spirit is fragmented, scattered across the very places that defined her final days: her prison cell, the green where she was executed, the chapel where she was buried. Paranormal experts suggest that trauma of such magnitude can leave a psychic imprint so powerful that it repeats over and over, like a needle stuck on a broken record. Some believe Anne Boleyn continues to haunt the tower not in vengeance, but in sorrow. Her life was stolen, her name was blackened, and her only daughter, Elizabeth I, would rule England without her. Perhaps her soul lingers, not to frighten the living, but to seek closure that history never gave her. Whatever the reason, her presence is undeniable. She is the queen who lost her crown, her life, and her peace, all within the tower's cold stone walls. And even now, centuries later, her ghost still walks, elegant, tragic, and unforgettable. Perhaps the most heartbreaking and mysterious tale linked to the Tower of London is that of the two young brothers known as the Princes in the Tower, Edward V and his younger sibling, Richard, Duke of York. Their disappearance in 1483 remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in British history, and their restless spirits are believed to haunt the tower to this day. Their story is not only tragic but also deeply disturbing because it involves innocence, betrayal, and possibly royal murder, all within the cold, confining walls of England's most infamous castle. When King Edward IV died suddenly, his 12-year-old son Edward was next in line for the throne. But due to his young age, he was placed under the protection of his uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Edward and his 9-year-old brother Richard were moved into the Tower of London allegedly for their safety before Edward's coronation. But the coronation never happened. Instead, within weeks, their uncle declared the boys illegitimate and took the throne for himself as Richard III. Shortly after that, the boys vanished and were never seen alive again. Many historians believe they were murdered in the tower to eliminate any future claim to the throne. If true, that would make the tower not just their prison but also their grave. The discovery of two small skeletons, hidden beneath a staircase in the White Tower in 1674, seem to confirm this grim theory. The remains were quietly buried in Westminster Abbey, but no one can say for sure if they truly belonged to the lost princes. And so, their souls may have never found peace. Sightings of the princes' ghosts began as early as the 15th century. Guards and visitors alike have reported seeing two pale, solemn boys dressed in nightgowns wandering silently through the tower at dusk. They are usually seen holding hands, sometimes clutching small wooden toys, with expressions not of fear, but of sadness. They never speak, never approach. They simply appear, standing close together, often near the bloody tower, where many believe they were last kept alive. There are accounts of these ghostly boys being seen at the foot of the staircase where the skeletal remains were found. One yeoman warder claimed that late one night, as he passed through the lower corridor, he saw what he thought were two children huddled at the bottom of the stairs. When he stepped closer to investigate, the figures faded into mist before his eyes. He described the sensation as a wave of sorrow crashing over him, a feeling that stayed with him for days. Children visiting the tower have also spoken of other kids playing in the corners of rooms where no living children were present. On more than one occasion, toddlers have waved or laughed at thin air directly at spots associated with the young princes. Paranormal experts claim that children are more open to spiritual energy and are more likely to witness residual hauntings. Their reactions lend further credibility to the long-standing rumors of the boys' ghostly presence. Then there are the sounds. Nighttime staff often report hearing muffled giggles, shuffling footsteps, and even the faint thud of running feet in otherwise empty halls. More disturbing are the accounts of sobbing, soft, heartbreaking cries that echo through the stone corridors in the dead of night. When security checks are made, the source is never found. The sadness surrounding these hauntings is unlike others in the tower. While many spirits are vengeful, angry, or terrifying, the princes seem to emanate a kind of innocence corrupted by cruelty. Their lives were stolen, their legacy erased, and their bodies likely hidden without dignity. It's no wonder their souls might still wander, trapped in confusion and sorrow, waiting for someone to finally tell their story with truth and justice. In 1992, paranormal investigators were given special access to the Bloody Tower for overnight study. They reported extreme fluctuations in temperature, electromagnetic surges, and the unexplained activation of audio equipment. But the most unnerving moment came when one investigator, sitting alone in the chamber believed to be their last residence, distinctly heard a young voice whisper, "We're still here." When he looked around, no one was there. But the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees instantly. To this day, their tale remains unsolved. And perhaps that's the reason they remain. Their story unfinished, their end never truly confirmed. The tower holds their secret tightly, just as it holds the cries of two boys who never grew up, never escaped, and never stopped waiting to be found. Among the many ghosts said to haunt the Tower of London, one of the most elusive and chilling is the spectre known only as the White Lady. Her presence is most strongly felt in the Wakefield Tower, one of the oldest and most historically significant parts of the fortress. Unlike the ghost of Anne Boleyn or the tragic princes, the White Lady's identity remains a mystery. No name, no backstory, only the overwhelming sense of sorrow and an undeniable feeling that someone is watching you. The Wakefield Tower itself dates back to the 13th century and was once part of the royal residence within the tower complex. Over the years, it has been the site of imprisonments, torture, and political intrigue. But none of those stories have left a mark as deeply as the spectral figure of the White Lady. Descriptions of her appearance are consistent across decades. She wears a long flowing gown of pale white, her face obscured by a translucent veil or downcast eyes. She moves without sound, without warning, and she never speaks. One of the earliest documented sightings dates back to the Victorian era, when a yeoman warder, tower guard, claimed to have encountered the woman while on night patrol. He reported seeing a pale glow in the upper chamber of the Wakefield Tower and assumed it was someone with a lantern. But as he approached, he realized the light was emanating from the figure herself. She stood motionless, looking out of the window as if waiting for someone. When the guard called out to her, she slowly turned her head, but her face was completely blank, a smooth, featureless surface. The guard fled in terror and later refused to enter that area alone again. Modern sightings continue to this day. Tower staff have reported a sudden and intense smell of roses in the Wakefield Tower despite no flowers being present. This floral scent is often considered her calling card. Witnesses say the smell appears suddenly, hangs in the air for several seconds, and is followed by a drop in temperature. Some believe that the scent is a symbol of grief or mourning, while others think it was something meaningful to her in life, a memory she clings to in death. One of the most famous incidents involving the White Lady occurred in the 1970s, when a group of tourists was touring the tower. As they entered the Wakefield Tower, one woman gasped and pointed toward a window. Several members of the group saw a veiled woman standing behind the glass, slowly raising her hand as if to wave. But the window was locked from the inside, and the room was empty. A photograph taken at that moment later showed what appeared to be a blurry white figure near the windowpane. The photo remains one of the most compelling pieces of paranormal evidence linked to the tower. Paranormal investigators who've studied the tower describe the White Lady's energy as sorrowful, not malevolent. She does not attack, scream, or try to scare. Instead, her appearances seem to express longing, possibly waiting for someone lost, or reliving a tragic moment from her past. Some believe she may have been a noblewoman imprisoned during the Wars of the Roses. Others suggest she was a political prisoner executed in secrecy, her name erased from history. Without a name or identity, her spirit is said to be in limbo, caught between worlds with no way to find peace. One eerie pattern tied to her appearances is the feeling of unseen eyes watching visitors. Even those who do not see her report an overwhelming sensation that they are not alone in the room. Some describe goosebumps, sudden nausea, or the urge to leave the chamber immediately. The Wakefield Tower, although beautiful in daylight, takes on an almost suffocating atmosphere after sunset. Tower staff often avoid spending too much time in the area without company. A former female tour guide who worked at the tower for over a decade shared a deeply personal account. One evening after closing hours, she returned to the Wakefield Tower to retrieve a forgotten scarf. As she stepped into the room, the familiar smell of roses overwhelmed her. Then she said she felt a cold hand gently touch her shoulder. She turned quickly, no one was there. But on the stone bench near the window, her scarf was folded neatly as though someone had placed it there for her. The White Lady never speaks, but her message is clear: I am still here. Whether she is mourning lost love, waiting for justice, or simply bound by the grief that consumed her in life, her presence continues to chill those who cross her path. She is a ghost without a name, but with a sorrow so powerful even death could not silence her. Of all the dark corners within the Tower of London, none live up to their name more grimly than the Bloody Tower. While it's infamous for the mysterious disappearance of the two young princes, the Bloody Tower has a reputation for something even darker: the lingering presence of tortured souls. For centuries, it served as a prison for enemies of the crown, many of whom were brutally interrogated, psychologically broken, and in some cases left to die in silence. The echoes of that cruelty still resonate, making the Bloody Tower one of the most terrifying places in England's most haunted fortress. The Bloody Tower's reputation was forged through centuries of bloodshed. Originally known as the Garden Tower, it gained its sinister name from the sheer number of deaths and tortures associated with it. While other parts of the tower complex were used for public executions or imprisonments, the Bloody Tower was often a place of secrecy where confessions were extracted not by diplomacy but by force. Shackles still hang from its damp stone walls, and ancient wooden beams bear scorch marks and scratches said to be made by desperate fingernails. One of the most tormented spirits believed to inhabit this tower is that of Sir Walter Raleigh. Imprisoned here for nearly 13 years under the orders of King James I, Raleigh was once a celebrated explorer and writer. Though his treatment was less brutal than others, he suffered deeply from isolation and the loss of his reputation. Visitors today claim to have heard the sound of quill on parchment echoing through empty halls, despite no one being present. Some say the ghost of Raleigh appears as a tall, robed figure pacing in the upper room, muttering to himself in an unintelligible tone. But not all spirits of the Bloody Tower are as quiet or contemplative. Numerous yeoman warders have reported hearing agonizing screams from within the lower chamber, screams that seem to come from no identifiable source. These cries have been described as inhuman, as though someone is being tortured or tormented beyond imagination. One guard in the 1980s was so disturbed by what he heard one night, wailing followed by the sound of chains dragging across stone, that he resigned the very next morning, refusing to speak about the incident again. Cold spots in the Bloody Tower are common, But they don't just cause discomfort. They are often so intense that visitors can see their breath in the air, even in summer. Some people report pressure on their chest, as though something unseen is trying to push them down or hold them back from moving. Others feel watched, aggressively watched, not by one spirit but by many. Paranormal investigators have theorized that the energy within the Bloody Tower isn't tied to a single ghost, but to a collective imprint left behind by countless souls who suffered there. A particularly chilling story comes from a tower guard who patrolled the Bloody Tower in the early 2000s. While walking his route late at night, he saw a shadow move across the far wall, a figure that seemed to be crawling, not walking. When he shone his flashlight, the corridor was empty, but the floor was wet with what looked like water or blood. He called in backup, but by the time anyone else arrived, the floor had dried completely. The cameras covering that hallway had mysteriously glitched during the same time. Then there are the chains. Tourists and staff alike have reported hearing them dragging, clinking, rattling as though someone is still shackled and trying to escape. Some witnesses claim they followed the sound only for it to stop suddenly, leaving nothing but silence and darkness. In the torture chamber itself, now part of the public exhibit, guests have fainted, become dizzy, or claimed to hear whispers begging for mercy. Perhaps the most sinister account comes from a paranormal team who held a late-night investigation. During an EVP electronic voice phenomenon session, one investigator asked, "Who are you?" The audio playback revealed a faint, guttural voice saying, "Still bleeding." Another asked, "What do you want?" The reply, "To be heard." These responses were not from any known source. The tower was empty except for them. Why do these tortured spirits remain? Some say they are trapped by the pain they endured. Others believe the violence done to them in secret created a psychic prison. Whatever the cause, the Bloody Tower does not forgive and it does not forget. Its walls absorbed centuries of screams, betrayal, and torment, and at night, they give those horrors back. This is not just a room with a dark history, it is a place where pain echoes eternally. The Tower of London is known for its royal executions, tortured souls, and grieving queens, but among its most bizarre and terrifying hauntings is one that defies all expectations, the ghost of a bear. While it may sound like something out of folklore, the phantom bear is one of the oldest and most chilling supernatural reports linked to the tower, dating back centuries. It's not a metaphorical bear representing rage or power, it is believed to be the lingering spirit of a real, massive animal that once roamed the grounds as part of the royal menagerie. From the 13th to the 19th century, the tower housed the Royal Menagerie, a private zoo maintained by the monarchy. Exotic animals, gifts from foreign dignitaries, and symbols of British imperial power were kept within its stone walls. Lions, tigers, monkeys, elephants, and yes, even polar bears were imprisoned behind bars for royal amusement. These animals lived in harsh conditions, often neglected, and sometimes became violent from their suffering and confinement. The phantom bear is believed to be the spectral remnant of one of these creatures, most likely the polar bear gifted to King Henry III in 1252 by the King of Norway. Historical accounts confirm that the bear was kept chained within the tower grounds and was sometimes allowed to swim and fish in the River Thames, tethered by a long leash. But while its life may have ended centuries ago, its presence, many claim, never left. The most infamous sighting occurred in 1816 when a sentry guarding the Jewel Room encountered something that left him paralyzed with fear. According to official records, the guard was standing at his post late one foggy night when he heard heavy, dragging footsteps behind him. When he turned, he saw a massive bear-like creature lunging at him. Instinctively, he struck out with his bayonet, but the weapon passed clean through the beast. The guard collapsed in shock and later died of fright, unable to explain what he had seen. His death was recorded as the result of terror, and it sent ripples through the tower's ranks. Since then, there have been multiple reports of similar sightings. Yeoman warders and night watchmen have described hearing deep growls echoing through the corridors near the old menagerie area. Others have smelled the strong odor of wet fur or animal musk suddenly appearing and vanishing with no explanation. A few have even claimed to see glowing eyes in the dark, low to the ground, just before feeling a sudden gust of cold wind rush past them. What makes the phantom bear especially terrifying is the raw primal fear it provokes. Unlike human apparitions, which may inspire sorrow or curiosity, the bear exudes pure menace. Witnesses speak of an overwhelming sense of dread, like they've become prey in a predator's territory. Some investigators believe the bear is not a true ghost, but rather a spiritual echo, a creature forced to endure suffering in life, now replaying its torment in death. During a paranormal investigation in the 1990s, a team brought infrared cameras into the area where the old bear pits were once located. While reviewing the footage, one camera picked up a large, heatless shape moving in the shadows, an outline distinctly resembling a bear on all fours. The figure moved slowly, then vanished behind a stone pillar. When the team checked the spot, they found nothing, no animals, no people, no traces of intrusion. But several members reported an icy chill, and one claimed to hear heavy breathing in his ear before becoming violently ill. To this day, tourists and guides who venture near the old menagerie area report strange sensations, clawing sounds on the walls, low growls, or sudden overwhelming fear. In some cases, visitors have fled the area without knowing why, later saying they felt a huge presence watching them just out of sight. These reports are not frequent, but they are consistent, always describing something unnatural, something animalistic, and something deeply wrong. Why would the ghost of a bear remain in the Tower of London? Perhaps it's not about unfinished business, but unresolved agony. A wild creature, torn from its home, chained and put on display, denied freedom until death, such suffering might stain the very earth where it occurred. And unlike human ghosts that seek justice or comfort, the bear seeks nothing. It simply haunts, repeating the rage, pain, and primal fear it endured centuries ago. So the next time you wander near the ruins of the Royal Menagerie, listen closely. If you hear a low growl, feel a blast of icy air, or sense something large and unseen moving nearby, don't run. Just don't turn your back, because the bear still walks. While the Tower of London is steeped in medieval blood and ancient curses, its reputation as a paranormal hotspot is far from a relic of the past. In fact, some of the most terrifying, well-documented, and unexplained hauntings have occurred in modern times within the last few decades. Unlike the old legends passed down through generations, these stories come from trained professionals, tourists, employees, and even surveillance equipment. These are not the tales of kings and queens long gone, but real accounts from people like you and me, proof that the tower is still very much alive with the dead. One of the most disturbing modern encounters took place in 2003, when a security officer monitoring the tower's CCTV system noticed something odd on the screens. In one of the sealed rooms, a location closed to the public, a strange mist began forming out of nowhere. First, it seemed like smoke, but then it took shape, the unmistakable silhouette of a person in historical clothing, slowly moving across the room. The figure paused in front of the camera, turned toward it as if it knew it was being watched, and then vanished without a trace. When guards rushed to the location, they found the room still sealed. Nothing had entered or left. The footage was saved and reviewed repeatedly, with no technical explanation ever found. Another chilling incident happened in 2015, when a group of schoolchildren on a field trip entered the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, the burial site of and Bullen and other executed nobles. One young girl began crying uncontrollably. When asked what was wrong, she said she saw a woman in a long black dress kneeling by the altar, but none of the adults saw anything. She later described the woman in detail, matching the historical descriptions of Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, who was executed in the Tower at age 67. Margaret's death was particularly gruesome, as she was hacked to death in a botched execution after refusing to lay her head on the block. To this day, her ghost is said to run screaming around the execution site at night. Yeoman warders, also known as beefeaters, live within the tower walls and have strict military backgrounds. Many are reluctant to speak about ghost sightings, but off the record, some have shared harrowing stories. One former warder recounted how, during a stormy night in 1999, he was doing rounds when he heard footsteps in the snow behind him. Thinking it was another guard, he turned only to find no one there. The footsteps continued for several minutes, matching his pace, before stopping altogether. Later, reviewing the CCTV, nothing was seen. And yet, the sound of the steps was clearly picked up by his body mic. Another modern phenomenon involves tourists suddenly fainting in specific areas, most commonly near Traitors' Gate and the White Tower. While fainting might seem like coincidence or heat exhaustion, many victims describe a strange pressure, dizziness, and the sense that something is pulling them downward. One woman who fainted near Traitors' Gate later described the sensation as being dragged underwater by invisible hands. Medical checks revealed nothing physically wrong. Tower staff, though professionally discreet, quietly refer to these occurrences as the tower's way of reminding us who's really in charge. Paranormal investigators who have been granted special access to the tower describe it as a supercharged energy zone. EMF detectors spike wildly without electrical interference. EVP, electronic voice phenomena, recordings often pick up unintelligible whispering, crying, or even commands like leave or get out. In 2018, one investigator claimed to have been physically pushed in the Bloody Tower by an unseen force. The incident was caught on thermal imaging and showed a cold imprint where the hand would have been. Even today, in a time of smartphones and skepticism, the tower continues to generate fresh stories. Several nighttime photographs taken by visitors have captured shadowy figures, misty outlines, or strange lights, often dismissed at first as camera malfunctions until multiple guests produce eerily similar images from different angles. One particular photo, taken in 2022, shows a figure in a ruffled collar and long tunic standing beside the chapel window despite no one being present at the time. The image was analyzed and declared unedited, adding to the tower's growing archive of unexplained evidence. Perhaps what makes these modern hauntings so powerful is their consistency. Different people, different decades, same locations, same experiences. The Tower of London is not just haunted by its past, it is actively haunted now. The veil between life and death, it seems, is thinner here. Time folds in on itself, and centuries-old suffering bleeds into the present. In the tower, ghosts don't just visit. They stay. The Tower of London is not merely a castle. It is not merely a prison, nor solely a fortress, nor even just a museum of British history. It is a vessel heavy with the energy of betrayal, execution, ambition, fear, and sorrow. It has endured for nearly 1,000 years, and in all that time it has collected something deeper than blood. It has collected souls. Unlike other haunted places that may echo with a single spirit or a lingering legend, the tower holds its dead. And it refuses to let them go. What makes the tower so different, so powerful in its haunting, isn't just the number of people who died here. It's the way they died. Kings and queens betrayed by their own blood. Children murdered under cover of darkness. Innocents tortured for political convenience. Animals caged and forgotten. Each death wasn't just a physical end, it was a psychological wound, a moment of emotional rupture that carved itself into the very stone of the building. And if you believe in energies that linger, then the tower is an eternal storm of unrest. Even today, those who enter the tower often describe feeling an invisible heaviness. It's not just history they're stepping into, it's a living memory, one that doesn't welcome strangers. Many spiritualists believe that when intense emotions are present during death, like terror, rage, grief, or injustice, they imprint a place like ink on a page. The tower, having absorbed centuries of such deaths, has become a spiritual black hole, pulling the past into the present. Ghosts are often described as echoes, residual energy trapped in time. But at the tower, something deeper is happening. The ghosts here don't just replay, they respond. They move, appear, watch, interact. They are not fragments. They are awake. Paranormal experts who've investigated the tower describe it not as haunted, but as inhabited. They speak of sentient presences, entities aware of the living, reacting to attention, sometimes drawn to those with particular sensitivity. Perhaps the most chilling element is how these spirits seem bound to their stories, repeating moments of trauma over and over. Anne Boleyn is seen walking near the site of her beheading, not as a ghost seeking vengeance, but as a woman reliving her own death eternally. The princes in the tower are spotted silently holding hands, wandering the same corridors they vanished from centuries ago, not crying out, just existing. The White Lady never speaks, never moves with purpose, always looking out a window that never opens, waiting. These spirits don't move on because they can't. They are trapped, not just by walls, but by their fates. And still, the tower draws people in. Every year, millions walk its halls, take selfies on its steps, and listen to stories with polite curiosity. But beneath the tourist spectacle lies a spiritual engine that has never stopped turning. The more people come, the more energy is stirred. Some believe this attention reactivates the hauntings, feeding them like fire to dry wood. The more we look into the tower's dark heart, the more it seems to look back. There's a theory among occult historians that the tower is a convergence point, a place where ley lines of spiritual energy intersect. If true, that might explain why so many hauntings are centered here, and why the spirits are so strong. The tower is a beacon, a trap, and a theater for the dead all at once. They remain because they are bound not only to the structure, but to us, to the fact that we remember, that we ask, that we fear them. The tower isn't just haunted because people died there. It's haunted because we never let them be forgotten. And perhaps that's the true horror of the Tower of London. It is a place where death does not bring peace, where time does not erase pain, where history does not fade into silence. It is a place where the past and present live side by side, one in daylight and one in the dark. So if you ever find yourself walking its stone corridors and you feel a sudden chill or hear soft footsteps behind you or see a figure vanish around the corner, remember this, they're still there. And the tower still holds them. All of them. 65.